Hi, I'm Lindsay Horvath, Supervisor for Los Angeles County's 3rd District, and I'm joined by Los Angeles County Chief Sustainability Officer Rita Kampalath. And following January's devastating wildfires, Los Angeles County has been keeping sustainability at the forefront of recovery and rebuilding as we look at the new reality that climate change brings to us. So we're here to talk about sustainability, equity, and how all of this is critical to our rebuilding process. So thank you for joining me, Rita.
Of course, thank you so
Glad
much.
to have you here. There's been a lot of discussion around the role that climate change has played in our lives, and I think we've seen it firsthand at the beginning of this year. So can you talk a bit about what climate change contributed to the fires and the devastation that we've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're so right. I mean, we're seeing the impacts of climate change all around us, whether it's drought or extreme heat or now these horrific fires. So I think it's still complicated, and it's still something that's going to be parsed out in a lot of researchers and academics in terms of exactly what the impacts were. But one of the things that we know is that a lot of the things that impact Los Angeles regularly in terms of climate hazards are things that can increase our wildfire risk. So, things like the precipitation whiplash of high precipitation followed by drought, so we have lots of vegetation and then very dry conditions, extreme heat, and then high winds. We sort of had that perfect storm of conditions over the past couple of years, and that's certainly contributed to a higher wildfire risk.
So while we're thinking about what a rebuild looks like, so many people are eager to get home, and I know there's been a big focus on us moving quickly because we want that ash and debris out of our communities. What should we really be paying attention to with all of that back and forth in mind? How do we help us even ourselves out a little bit? And what does a resilient rebuild look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something that our team is really thinking about. Like you said, in the immediate aftermath, the biggest concern, of course, is folks' safety, and also how can we make sure that residents come back to some sense of normalcy as quickly as possible. And that's really where the focus is. And I'm really grateful for all our county colleagues who are really, really focused on that part. Longer term, of course, we want to be thinking about what that rebuild looks like, because ultimately, we want those communities to come back, and we want them to come back to a community that is in their vision and driven by what really brought them to a community and what made them feel connected to it, what made those communities unique. In addition to that, though, we want those communities as rebuilt to be here for generations to come, right? So when we're thinking about resilience, it's really about how do we make sure that we are best able to mitigate these risks and ensure that something like this never happens again.
Mm-hmm. So specifically, what are some of those things that we should be looking at? I know I've had residents in Malibu who have said, this happened to us in Woolsey. We saw it with the Franklin fire just before the holidays. They don't want to keep rebuilding every couple of years just to be able to stay the community that's there. So what specifically should we be working with them on in the rebuilding process?
Absolutely. So there are, strategies like sort of at every scale, right? So we need to be thinking about, of course, our infrastructure and how we can do a better job of making sure that our energy and water infrastructure is prepared and resilient. But from the homeowner's perspective, there's certainly a lot of things that you can incorporate into your design as you're thinking about rebuilding, just in terms of home hardening, sealing up your house, but also the landscape around it. There are a lot of great resources and guides that are out there, too much to summarize, really. But I will also say that one of the things that our office is really going to be focused on is, pulling together those resources into a guide that's kind of easy for people to access. Because one of the things about the rebuild is that we also want to make sure that it's as easy and streamlined as possible for folks.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know one of the things that people talk a lot about is the cost.
Yes.
So I think the cost is something that we're factoring in, both in what does it cost to rebuild, but also what is the cost of not doing that at this stage when you're rebuilding, because insurance companies are a critical component to people being able to come back to. So are there programs that as a county we're helping people tap into when it comes to those costs?
Yeah, well, again, one of the things we're going to be working on is trying to figure out where we can access incentives and set those up for folks. I think it's also important to realize that when we're thinking about a rebuild, which unfortunately is the place that we're in, rebuilding with resilience is a little easier than retrofitting your house once it exists. So there are choices that people can make right now. Again, it can just be in terms of design and some materials. that, can really set them up for having a more resilient rebuild. I mean, I don't want to discount the fact that it's super easy and that there's no cost associated with it, especially when you're talking about certain building materials. But that really is something that we're going to be working on. And I think one of the things that is going to be really important is, like you said, making sure that people understand the trade-offs, right? Like the investment now is going to help you save in the long run. And hopefully we can get our insurance partners on board with understanding that as well.
I know you're thinking about this. I'm glad that I'm here with our Chief Sustainability Officer who's thinking about not just this moment of rebuild for, different parts of our county, but you're in charge of our county plan, which is our county's award-winning sustainability plan that touches on so many different aspects of what sustainability looks like for our region. So can you talk a little bit about what it is and some of the things that it's allowed us to do in the county?
Yeah, of course. So we're also excited about the sustainability plan, something we're very proud of. So our county's sustainability plan was adopted in 2019. It was the county's first sustainability plan. And what it is it really presents like sort of a vision of what it means to be a sustainable region for LA. And it was built on a lot of stakeholder process and input, both from our community partners, academics, private sector, as well as residents. So it really lays out things like healthy infrastructure, accessible parks, a healthy and resilient food system. So it's very broad and comprehensive, but it is also like sort of that high level aspirational vision of what it will really mean to be sustainable as Los Angeles. There are unsurprisingly quite a lot of actions, about 159 to be exact. We're proud to say that we've actually made progress on most of those actions. Some specific things that we can talk about in the past 5 years, for instance, we just put out our community forest management plan, which really lines out strategies and actions to build up our urban canopy, which is so important for so many things: biodiversity, heat, community well-being and greening. We were also really proud of the county's phase out of oil drilling. That was another priority action in the sustainability plan, which of course your Board of Supervisors really led the way on. There are other things like putting together a food equity strategic plan and building parks. So there are a host of things that I can name. And again, you can probably get a sense of just the scope of the plan overall.
Yeah, I know in the 3rd District, Pacoima Beautiful was at the table with you, and they're from the Northeast San Fernando Valley, and one of the issues there is very extreme heat. And so I know we've adopted an action plan with regard to that. When I was chair, we launched the county's county-wide water plan, thinking about sustainability of our clean drinking water supply, as well as water that we have to fight fires. So there are a lot of action items in there and a lot of areas that we need to cover when we're thinking holistically about resiliency and sustainability. So I'm excited to see all of those elements of the plan come into fruition. So thank you for talking about that.
Yeah, thanks. And absolutely. And I will also say that with this revision of the plan, one of the key things and areas that we want to address with the revision is climate resilience. As you know, and I know that you've led on yourself, climate resilience has become a priority. You named extreme heat, of course, and of course the wildfires. So one of the things we will be focusing on is creating more of a comprehensive climate resilience strategy within the sustainability plan. And we're excited to be getting out to residents in the community to really talk about that.
And is there something that has been particularly helpful that residents have been offering in terms of seeing the implementation come to life?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so in terms of the update, a lot of those workshops are coming forward. And so one of the things people can do, we definitely hear from folks on individual plans who are really engaged and wanting to do things, are obviously interested in sustainability issues. But we are putting out like a survey that'll be accessible on our website. Actually, I think it's accessible now. It's cso.lacounty.gov.
Okay.
And people can go to that. We would love to hear from folks on their input. The survey will actually ask folks about what their sustainability priorities are, what they're seeing in their communities, and what they'd like to see in the future.
That's great. I think the more we help people understand what role they can play, it's not just sort of like climate change, this big issue that's out there, but it's something they have direct responsibility for in their own neighborhood, in their own community, and they have a role to play. And that partnership, I think, is critical. Is there anything else you want residents to know as we're thinking about how we put into action items our sustainability plan?
Yeah, I mean, again, the sustainability plan was really built on a collective vision, right? And we are very proud of the stakeholder engagement process that went into that. And we want to maintain that both in the plan update as well as we're thinking immediately in this rebuild. We really want to make sure that the communities that we bring back and the plan we put forward long-term reflects that collective vision. So we're hoping to get input, and we're excited to work with folks.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to have you with us, and very exciting to see the work that you're doing. I know it's important to our district. I know it's important to our whole county, and the way that we work together really determines how successful we'll be. So I want to thank you for joining us, and thank you for listening in. Please let us know what your priority issues are so we can be bringing that into the work of our Chief Sustainability Office.